As absentee votes are cast this month, they're being cast on new personal electronic ballot cards after an issue this month required all the cards to be replaced. Richland County Elections Director Roki Suleiman explained the problem.
We noticed a situation where we were putting our personal electronic ballots into the machines to activate the machines, and the machines were shutting down.
The cards tell the machines what elections to pull up for voters. Suleiman said they worked with the vendors for a few days to try and find a solution to the software issue.
And we determined that there was probably a hardware issue with those cartridges, so we received new cartridges from the vendor and just programmed those instead to make sure that they all work. We've tested them all and they're all working properly, and there are going to be no problems on election day.
The old cartridges were 14 years old, and Suleiman says this is the first year they've had an issue. But he warned that this could happen again.
And this is just another example of the aging voting equipment. Whereas the equipment gets older, we're going to start seeing more mechanical issues, more hardware issues, some more software issues. That's why it's really important that we try to transition to new voting equipment as quickly as possible.
Suleiman has a suggestion for where the state should go.
My preference is that voters are voting on a paper ballot that they mark, and it's inserted into a machine that counts the ballot. And that way we can go back after the election and do a post-election audit that is independent of the machine to make sure the machine tabulates the paper votes properly.
In the meantime, he's confident this year's election is running smoothly. In Richland County, Jacob Reynolds, News 19 WLTX. South Carolina State Election Commission spokesman Chris Whitmire showed me how the voting system works for the entire state.
In South Carolina, we have a uniform statewide voting system. So whichever county you're voting in, you're going to vote on the same equipment.
The machines purchased from election systems and software are now 14 years old.
Over time, counties may have replaced equipment, may have added equipment, but by and large, it's the same voting system and equipment that was purchased in 2004. The voting system is old. It's approaching the end of its life. It needs to be replaced, and that's our plan, is to replace it before the 2020 general election. Now, with that said, we haven't seen any widespread, pervasive issues with the voting system.
To replace the system would cost an estimated $75 million. So far, the Election Commission has $15 million, so that means they'll need $60 million more from the state.
We've made the General Assembly well aware of the need to replace this voting system, and the General Assembly comes back in January, and we look forward to hearing what the General Assembly has to say about it.
Rising maintenance costs, harder to find replacement parts, voter expectations of modern technology, and security concerns are the main reason the commission recommends a replacement. But despite the age, Whitmire still is confident in the machine's integrity for this year.
There's no evidence that the State Election Commission has ever been hacked, or that any election has been interfered with or compromised by any outside entity.
So as votes are tallied, he hopes the days of these machines are numbered. In Columbia, Jacob Reynolds, News 19 WLTX.
And good evening now. Thanks for being with us. I'm J.R. Berry.
And I'm Darcy Strickland. Election day has come and gone, but not without voting machine problems in Richland County.
As News 19's Jacob Reynolds discovered today, not only were there issues for the voters, but also issues for election staff members as well.
And until the Richland County absentee ballots come in, we can't confirm that. So I would encourage you to continue to drink, eat. And I'm going to go back over there and see if I can't influence somebody at the Richland County Election Commission to do their friggin' job.
State Senate candidate Dick Harpootlian had strong words for Richland County as he waited on results Tuesday night, results that came in the early morning hours. On Wednesday, County Election Director Roki Suleiman says the issue was this machine. Purchased roughly in 2004, the absentee ballot counting machine, the one machine responsible for counting the county's nearly 7,000 absentee votes, broke several times Tuesday. But it's the technology the machine still uses that's raising questions, like the zip drive, technology similar to a floppy disk.
Recorded on 3.5-inch discs, and I mean the technology is old, and the machine was it kept jamming the ballots as we were going through, and we'd have to stop and reprocess a ballot and send it through, and it was maddening.
The zip drive sends the tally to these dot matrix printers, which Suleiman says is more evidence it's time for these machines to go.
The voting equipment is at the end of its life cycle.
Some voters complained about issues with the touchscreen voting machines. Suleiman said that was a calibration issue with the touchscreen, user error, or confusion on straight ticket votes. Overall, he says they did not have more complaints than other high-intensity elections, but the age of the machines was on display.
We had machines that the batteries went out. We had machines where the power cords were failing.
One machine at a Ridgeview polling place caught fire as they tried to fix the power cord, putting it out of service. In Columbia, Jacob Reynolds, News 19 WLTX.
Well, the State Election Commission says that they're hoping this is the last statewide race using this machine. Their budget proposal includes a $60 million request that would help fund a statewide replacement before 2020. News 19 reported earlier this week about voting equipment issues in Richland County, like long tallying times and issues with touchscreens. There's also been closer scrutiny on how we vote in the Palmetto State. Our Jacob Reynolds talked to a USC computer science professor known for critiquing the state's aging voting equipment about why he's calling for a change before 2020.
I think in order to restore trust in elections, we need to get as much technology out of this process as possible.
USC computer science professor Duncan Buell has been auditing state election results independently for years. He and the State Election Commission started separate audits in 2010.
We have seen a significant improvement, I think, in the quality of the process since 2010.
Buell's concern is with what he considers confusing election software operated by often older poll volunteers, security concerns, and aging hardware.
I have never seen instances of genuine fraud. I'm not sure I would be able to see instances of genuine fraud if it were done well.
Which is why he's one of several voices calling for a new system.
Hand-marked paper, scanned at the precinct.
State Election Commission spokesman Chris Whitmire agrees a new system is needed, but more so because the current one is aging, not because of issues like what Richland County reported earlier this week.
Plenty of other counties conducted elections on the voting system. It worked fine.
He continued that it shouldn't take a large problem with the current equipment to get the necessary funding from the state legislature.
Elections are far too important to wait on any catastrophic event to replace the system that we depend on.
Whitmire says the commission will require a new system have some sort of paper trail of the voter's ballot. In Columbia, Jacob Reynolds, News 19 WLTX.
Whitmire says a new system would create confidence in its dependability, add newer security measures, and meet voter and poll worker expectations of 2018 technology.
Just a week after election night, newly elected state senator Dick Harpootlian says finding a replacement for the state's voting equipment is a priority.
Well, these machines are 14 years old. You know, nobody has a 14-year-old iPad or a 14-year-old computer. And so the technology's vastly improved over the last 14 years.
Harpootlian critiques how long vote counting took on election night and says he does not want other candidates to experience the same thing.
What we went through on Tuesday night, last Tuesday night, was horrible. Not only did the voters not find out until the early morning hours who had won a race, candidates like me figured once they closed the machines out and had the computer chip that they plugged in, we ought to know by 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we didn't.
Harpootlian said he would support buying new machines and would urge others to do so, but he wants to make sure the money, an expected $60 million, is well spent.
I want to get down in the weeds, get very granular, and look and see how this machine stacks up. Has it been used elsewhere? Have there been problems elsewhere? And how expensive is it? We're not a state with a lot of spare money to spend.
Richland County Democratic Representative Todd Rutherford says quality election equipment is the base for every other decision.
Because what people need to understand is their tax dollars go to a democracy that stands for something. What it stands for depends on what the voters tell us. If the voters are voting and telling us one thing, but we don't get it because our machines are broken, then we're all lost. If people are going to the polls trying to get rid of somebody, be it Democrat or Republican, and that person stays in place because our machines can't tally their votes, then we've got to do something. We've got to do it right away.
Rutherford also said it would be a top priority of his at the start of the term. The State Election Commission hopes for a new system by 2020. Democratic state representatives Beth Bernstein and Todd Rutherford, along with Republican Kirkman Finley, met in Senator Thomas McElveen's office to talk voting machines.
It's shocking to me that we don't have any kind of paper trail to verify what votes are being made.
The bipartisan group of four say changing the state's 14-year-old voting infrastructure is a top priority for the new term.
Our intention is we will be pre-filing House and Senate bills on this issue and trying to work together to get this thing done.
The legislators say they want to make sure South Carolina's future elections are decided fairly, quickly, and with a high level of confidence for voters. And they say they have a plan to pay for it.
We have some $177 million in surplus revenue right now in a bank account that could easily address this problem. We also know that we have a big lottery winner up in the upstate, and those state income tax revenues alone should provide a huge boost to our general fund.
Representative Finley says the price tag should also be lower than State Election Commission estimates as he pushes for a return to paper ballots.
You walk in with machines now and they're long lines. People leave. With paper ballots, you can have 30 people voting at the same time as long as they have a private place to sit down and cast their ballot. What does it take? A piece of paper and a pencil.
His Democratic House colleague agreed.
It seems that that is the safest, best procedure to use, and it's also the most economical. So why not use the best procedure that's also the cheapest?
State Election Commission officials have said repeatedly the current machines function properly but are nearing the end of their life expectancy and need to be replaced before 2020. WLTX first reported on issues with Richland County absentee voting on October 22nd.
And we were putting our personal electronic ballots into the machines to activate the machines, and the machines were shutting down.
But then the county election director said the problem was fixed.
We've tested them all, and they're all working properly, and there are going to be no problems on Election Day.
On the 23rd, the State Election Commission said the 14-year-old machines statewide were nearing the end of their life expectancy.
It's approaching the end of its life. It needs to be replaced, and that's our plan, is to replace it before the 2020 general election. Now, with that said, we haven't seen any widespread, pervasive issues with the voting system.
Fast forward to Election Day. Richland County reported problems with voting touchscreens, and one local candidate complained about how long it took to count votes. And Richland County pointed to age again.
I mean, the technology is old, and the machine was just, it kept jamming the ballots as we were going through, and we'd have to stop and reprocess a ballot and send it through.
On November 7th, the Election Commission called it another isolated problem.
Plenty of other counties conducted elections on the voting system. It worked fine.
The same day, a USC professor known for independently auditing state elections called for change.
In order to restore trust in elections, we need to get as much technology out of this process as possible.
November 9th, U.S. Representative Jim Clyburn weighed in.
We need to throw out this equipment we got. We need to spend whatever money is necessary.
He was joined by state legislators on November 12th and 13th who called for change to paper ballots.
With paper ballots, you can have 30 people voting at the same time as long as they have a private place to sit down and cast their ballot. What does it take? A piece of paper and a pencil.
The legislators said they plan to introduce House and Senate bills to replace South Carolina's equipment before the next term begins.
And we start off with breaking news today, as Governor Henry McMaster has removed the entire Richland County Election Board.
Our Jacob Reynolds has been following the late-breaking developments for us. He is joining us now in the Information Center with those details. Jacob?
Well, J.R. Darcy, after Richland County did not count 1,040 votes in the November election, Governor Henry McMaster, in an executive order sent late this afternoon, decided to fire the entire election board for the county. In his executive order, he gives reasons for those firings, saying the board had certification incorrect results in 2010, long voting lines and missed deadlines in 2012, and a recount issue in the 2016 primary. The governor continues to criticize the board for missing more than 1,000 votes in November's election from 2018. And McMaster also says the board exhibited misconduct at their meeting yesterday evening, saying bad behavior and improper conduct affected its ability to perform its duties. In a press release announcing that executive order, the governor says, quote, South Carolinians' confidence in the lawful and professional oversight of elections must never be jeopardized. It continues, the behavior of these officials are wholly unacceptable and cannot be tolerated. Now, he did say today, Richland County State House delegation would appoint new commissioners, and then they would get final confirmation from the governor. And earlier today, we talked to the State Election Commission for South Carolina about what exactly went wrong with the counting error and what they're doing to try to make sure it doesn't happen again.
There are standard procedures in place that should have prevented this from happening. They're very simple reconciliation procedures, very simple checks and balances that, when done properly, would prevent this type of error.
Chris Whitmire with the State Election Commission says it was human error that left more than 1,000 votes in Richland County not counted in November. Whitmire says they learned in late November and early December through their audit system that voter participation numbers were not matching results.
There were 4 missing machines, 2 in the absentee precinct, 1 in Rice Creek 1, and another in Ward 32 precinct.
Whitmire says a combination of errors collecting data after Election Day from personal electronic ballot cards inserted into the machines led to the missing votes. Whitmire told WLTX election supervisors did not gather and record cards from those 4 machines correctly or at all. The State Election Commission in Richland County say the now counted votes did not affect the final race outcomes. But voters we spoke to are still concerned.
I don't believe them. I don't believe them. And could there have been more votes than that? I don't trust the voting system.
And again, I think those people that are a little bit more stoical, those that feel as though my vote doesn't matter, that's going to help corroborate that particular opinion. And they'll perhaps say, well, why should I? So I really have a problem with that.
The State Election Commission says the machines are not to blame in this case, but are still pushing state lawmakers to budget millions of dollars for a statewide replacement before 2020. In Darcy, it actually wasn't just Richland County that had issues. The State Election Commission telling us that Bamberg County also had votes that were not tallied, but they did tell us they wanted to make sure voters knew those results did also not change the final outcomes, and they also told us that it was that election director's first year on the job. Back to you.
2 of Richland County's lawmakers say they support the governor's decision to remove the entire county election board in Richland County.
The move came after a contentious board meeting this week about more than 1,000 votes that were left not counted in November in the county. News 19's Jacob Reynolds asked them what's next and what they're going to require to nominate new board members.
I mean, there's third world countries that do a better job of conducting an election than Richland County does.
Richland County Senator Dick Harpootlian has had his share of headaches with the county's now former election officials since November. First, he was frustrated with how long it took to count votes on Election Day. Now it's concerned about how more than 1,000 votes were left uncounted until recently. It's why he supported Governor Henry McMaster's decision to remove the entire board.
I applaud the governor for taking this bold move. Now we on the delegation have to take a bold move, and that is to make sure the 5 people that we appoint are qualified, competent, want to do the work, have the intelligence and integrity to make sure that the election process is dealt with in a very open and transparent way.
Across the aisle, Representative Kirkman Finley also supported the move and called for a closer look at vote counting.
I mean, I think the most important thing we do at this point is investigate what happened and why it happened.
Finley, Harpootlian, and the rest of Richland County's state delegation will have to nominate 5 replacements to be appointed by the governor.
I'm not even certain at this point we don't need to bring someone in from another county who has run another large county, who has run it appropriately, and get them to run it. I mean, there are counties where this works. Ours is not one of them.
Both men say the need is urgent and work will begin quickly with a presidential primary and general election set for 2020. They also say this highlights the need for statewide ballots with a paper trail so counties have written proof of votes separate from machine tallies. In Richland County, Jacob Reynolds, News 19 WLTX.
And former Richland County Elections Director Roki Suleiman did not return our request for comment today, but we did get an email from former board chair Jane Emerson telling us she's sorry that the governor had what she calls a nuclear response to one problem board member. She adds she's very concerned about the staff, many of whom are recent hires, but she thinks that the deputy director will do a good job and hopes that he succeeds in restoring confidence in Richland County elections. Governor McMaster removed the entire Richland County Elections Board last week due to the uncounted ballots and other past issues. Tonight, one of those ex-members of the board is speaking out.
News 19's Jacob Reynolds spoke to that former member about how he reacted to the order and why Richland County has had nearly a decade of election controversies.
Member Pete Kennedy had served on the voter registration and election board here in Richland County for 4 years before being removed with the rest of his colleagues by the governor last week. He says he understands why the governor did what he did, but warned it'll just happen again if certain issues aren't fixed.
Richland County will in the future continue to have these problems because there's a huge dynamic involved in this. We have the county council we have to deal with, the county administration, and we have to deal with that, and that is a huge hindrance to us right now. There are many actions we have to take and votes we have to take that we need legal guidance, and we don't have that legal guidance.
It's one of the reasons Kennedy says a new election board won't automatically fix Richland County's election headaches. He also says the governor's removal order caught him off guard.
My reaction to the executive order was surprise. I didn't think that something like that would come down as quick as it did, and I thought there would be more discussion involved to find out exactly where the problems within the board lay, if they were the responsibility of the board.
But Kennedy says he and others were responsible after more than 1,000 votes weren't counted in November, but disagreed with the governor's order that said the board had not addressed the issue.
But we should have had a better tracking system of knowing where each machine or each flash card was, and we didn't. So that's our fault. We've already instituted changes.
And added that he had regrets over their contentious last meeting as a board several days ago.
If you let me speak, then I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You're not doing that. Enforcing the rules? No, ma'am, you're not.
Personally, I'm extremely embarrassed by what happened. That should not have happened. It did. One of our members of the board is just a rather combative person, and that was what happened. Is why things got out of hand and stuff. And Senator Harpootley was asking very valid questions, but it just became a dogfight in between the two of them, and I wish it had not, but it did.
Kennedy also told us today he does support lawmakers' push to move to paper ballots here in the state, saying getting rid of the current machines will start eliminating some of the issues they're seeing here in Richland County. Reporting in the county, Jacob Reynolds, News 19 WLTX.
Well, Kennedy said the current staff has his support.